Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have a problem.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the TopSpeed.com podcast. TopSpeed.com is your home for all the crazy, cool, and amazing internet or things on the internet that are automotive based. One day I will learn how to talk. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Christian Moe. Today, like always, I'm joined with our editor-in-chief, Justin Coupler. Justin, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. And joining this ragtag band of hooligans is Mr. Mark McNabb. Mark, how are you today?
I'm good, man. Just enjoying this nice, hot Florida day. Can't complain.
The weather has been really nice lately. Are you guys getting like some really nice weather?
Yeah, aching to go to the beach sometime this weekend, so yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be like in the 80s all week. It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, it's like 75 degrees here. There's a nice breeze blowing. It makes it really hard to get work done.
I can agree with that. Yeah, it's gotta love the weather, especially car guys. Drop the top, go for a ride.
I know. It's like I just like I really wish that like a Porsche Boxster would just roll into my driveway for a week, and I would just live in the car with the top off for the next couple of days. All right. Anyways, but let's get to work here. All right. So we're happy that everyone is joining us. We appreciate you guys tuning in. This is episode 5, so it's kind of a big deal for us. It's our first sort of landmark episode. We've made it 5.
Yes, we're halfway to double digits.
Yeah.
Woo! We're just happy to get past the first one, I think.
Yeah, a little bit. But let's go ahead and jump into things with our weekly wheels. We're going to start with Justin this week. Justin, you were driving a Lancer GT, is that correct?
Yes, I had the good old Lancer GT. Unfortunately, they did not give me the Evo model, although I begged them, pleaded, and they just wouldn't give it to me. I swear it's not because they didn't trust me, but they they gave me the GT, which is it's nice. It has all the goodies you like. Only about 170 horsepower, give or take. This is the one I spoke about actually last week that had a CVT transmission that actually wasn't all that bad because it's a cool little shiftable one. Has a little magnesium paddle shifters on the back of the steering wheel, and it shifted. Not trying to say that it is, but it shifted similar to a dual clutch. You got this real crisp, sweet, quick shifts, and the rev changes weren't all that drastic between all the gears. So it had 6 different settings, but they're just real quick slips in. But when you put it in regular CVT mode, you got the normal old droning wah the whole way you're driving. So it sucked in drive, but once you put it in sport mode and hit the paddle shifters, it was awesome.
Okay, I'm just like, so you say that CVT is good, and I've heard from a lot of people that the CVT in the new WRX is good, and Nissan does a tolerable CVT, but I still I'm gonna have to get behind the wheels of one of these things because in my brain a good CVT still sounds pretty terrible.
Well, I was selling cars, actually. Yes, I sold cars at one point, go figure. I was selling cars when the CVT first started making its comeback. Because it started in Subaru many years ago, but it came back in the Dodge Caliber. And I was at the Dodge dealership selling cars when that came out. And so I've had a lot of experience with them since then. And this is the first one that I can say I actually drove, and I was like, wow, that sounds like a normal transmission as long as you shift it manually.
Well, but it's more than sound for me. Like, I hate the rubber banding effect you sort of get. Like, you go to put your foot on the pedal and you just kind of like lag, and then you're going, and then as soon as you let off, you kind of ease off back again. It's
the furthest thing from being sporty at all. The one experience that I've had, or the most recent experience I've had with the CVT has been in that Corolla I talked about last week, and it just, like, you can mat the pedal and it just takes forever. It's not an acceleration issue. It's getting the power down, and it just sucked all the fun out of the car.
Yeah, this one, you definitely didn't have the rubber banding. Now, when you first start, of course, in first gear, yeah, you get that little bit of a drone as you're going through the first gear, or first range, actually, in this thing. But once you get shifting through the gears and hammering through them, you don't feel that droning anymore. It actually shifts just like a dual clutch. It's really strange looking, or really strange sounding and feeling.
Well, All right. Well, since you're the only one between the three of us that's driven it, we'll let you have it now, and we won't call you wrong. But the moment I
Yes.
get behind the wheel, be prepared, because
Now,
you might be wrong.
then I'll be wrong. I know I will be. But hey, at least it doesn't have too much power for you, so you can't say that. But more into this thing, it's a little bit dated. The body design, I don't know how long it's been around, but it's been way too long.
Yeah.
The interior is, save for swearing, is crappy. The trunk is practically useless. I really couldn't even get my son's stroller through the opening. The trunk is big, but the opening is so small. They have the cab pushed back so far. The opening is so small. And then if you get the GT package with that massive grocery cart spoiler on the back of it, the shocks that hold the trunk lid up are very, very weak. And I found that out via a bruise on the back of my head.
Ouch.
Yeah. I'm leaning down trying to stick the groceries in, and all of a sudden, whack, right in the back of my head. Oh.
Justin, I know we're friends and I know we're colleagues, but I cannot express to you how much money I would pay to watch you be nearly decapitated by the trunk of a Lancer in a grocery store parking lot.
I don't know which one's more funny, me trying to shove the rug through the opening of the Kia, or trying to put groceries in the back of a Lancer when it decapitated me. One of the two.
I think that would have made a really good April Fool's obituary. Justin decapitated by Lancer.
I'm just trying to imagine the noise it would make, because I know how thick a human skull is. I know how flimsy and resonating the metal is in those kind of trunk lids. So, like, it must have been a hell of a thung noise when it came down and hit you in the head.
It was quite a thung, and I'm pretty sure it resonated through the entire car, because we all know how cheap Mitsubishi's metal is. So the whole car kind of shook as it went through.
Rough.
That's a beautiful vision.
It's funny in hindsight, but at the time, I almost lost my temper.
Yeah. So Mitsubishi, I don't know what happened, but I have some issues with your car. And the press people are like, what do you mean? Like, it appears someone vandalized it and they set the trunk on fire. I really don't know what happened.
Yeah, I've no idea who they are and why they did it, but they did. What's a bump on the back of your head? Oh, that's nothing. Don't worry about that.
My wife got angry, hit me with the frying pan. You know, the usual.
Ouch.
All right. Well, let's move on. So Justin was driving something kind of sporty. Mark, though, you were more on the luxury end of items, weren't you?
That's quite right, my friend. I was driving the new 2014 Hyundai Equus, the new S-Class fighter from Hyundai. It's been out since 2010, but for 2014 they kind of reworked it, did some more updates on it. It looks a whole lot better. The looks aren't quite different, but they deleted some chrome trim strips and stuff to really clean it up. It looks really good. It's still powered by that 5-liter V8. It's got 429 horsepower.
I kind of dig that.
It's pretty respectable.
Yeah, like that Tau V8 is. I have some issues with some of Hyundai's engines, but I really dig that V8.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get the chance to open it up too much because it was in Miami when I got to drive it, and yeah, it was raining like cats and dogs, and traffic was going crazy. And if you've ever been in Miami, it's best to stay out unless you know how to drive like a complete maniac. It's ridiculous. But
I do know how to do that.
Not someone who knows how to drive, but just being idiotic in general. Sorry, my friends in Miami, but the traffic was terrible. Anyway, the car itself was really good. I really enjoyed it. The back seat's the best place to be, of course. Tons of legroom, and then if you get into the Ultimate Edition, you can get the screens in the back seats, or in the back of the front seats. You control the navigation, everything from there. So as you're sitting in the back seat, you can enter in the GPS coordinates and everything like that. Tell your driver where to go. It undercuts the Lexus LS 460 by like $30,000. That's the best part.
It's hard to believe how far Hyundai has really come. I mean, to even mention Hyundai in the same name as Lexus and Mercedes, I mean, that's nuts. And the Equus really does do its best to compete. Yeah, it's not the pure driver of, say, the S-Class or something in that realm, but it's still, the luxury items are right on par with them.
Yeah, and someone who's in this market for a car this expensive, they've got to have some sort of business sense. And to realize that you can get the car for 30 grand less than the competition, you can buy whatever, you can buy a Mazda for that, and or invest it or whatever you want to do with it. But the car, it's hard to pass up the business proposition on that. I think it's a good deal.
Right, and I mean, I think that's something that Hyundai's really hit on with this car, and with the like the new Genesis, which I think is a beautiful looking car,
Awesome looking car.
is that like, so if you are a hardcore S-Class buyer, you're not going to buy the Hyundai.
No.
Yes, it has a lot of the same features, but the overall fit and finish and quality just isn't quite on par. But it's really close. And if you're not someone who has spent the last 15 years buying an S-Class, the Equus is way more than you need and way more than you expect. And yeah, that 30 grand is huge. I mean, that makes all the difference in the world. And I
Yeah.
think that's one thing Hyundai has really hit on is like, I don't think they're stealing too many buyers from the big Germans, but if you are someone who you've just hit middle management, you're sort of looking to step into that really high luxury class, the moment you sit in an Equus and you see that sticker, you're going home in it.
Oh yeah.
So they're making huge strides in bringing people to the brand with that car. And I think that was the smartest decision about it, is no, they can't compete directly one-to-one. I mean, it's very comparable, but it's not a full competition. But they have all of these other people who are trying to get into that sort of level of luxury, and they're swiping sales like that left and right.
Yeah, I mean the base price on this car is 61,000. If you jump up to the next, like they call it the Ultimate Series, it's 68. And for 68 grand, you get all the options, everything you want. And hey, that's a darn good deal.
Agreed. I mean, it's really hard to argue with, to say the least.
Yeah, and the thing about it is too, I think Hyundai is really trying to separate the Equus line from the Hyundai brand name. Because if you go to the dealership, they're actually in separate corners and they're kind of like partitioned off. Um, and they're trying to make that Equus kind of its own separate luxury line. So people, they're gonna have a hard time getting past that Hyundai name, but I think you're right. It's not going to be a direct competitor against the Germans.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing with them trying to kind of separate the Equus from everything else. I've been to a few dealers and saw it. It's just off in its own little space. The Hyundai badges aren't all that prominent on it from what I
No.
recall of seeing it. I don't even know if I remember seeing a Hyundai badge on it anywhere.
There isn't. No, it's like the little flying emblem they've got. There's nothing Hyundai. There's no Circle H on there at all.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I knew at least was very little, but yeah, I didn't think there were any at all.
Is there not one now? I knew there wasn't when it was launched, but I thought they had put one on the 2014 model.
I really don't think so. Not at all.
Okay, yeah, because I remember that was one of the big things I thought about it when they first started, and I'm like, that's a brilliant idea that they don't have a single Hyundai badge on it, but at the same time, that says that we understand that our brand is a devalued commodity.
Yeah.
And that's sort of sad to see a company admit that.
And I'm looking now. Yes, there is one Hyundai badge on the outside. It's on the trunk lid right in the center. That's the only badge.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, it used to not be there, but now it is. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
it's
what I
there.
thought.
And there is not one on the inside that I can see.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, Justin or Christian, what were you driving this week?
It wasn't this week. It was a little while ago, but I had probably one of the best cars that I've spent time in, and no one really understands this machine or wants to buy one. I spent some time in a Ford Flex, big square boat thing from Ford.
Those are really cool, I think.
I think they're super cool. So they had two generations of them. The old generation with the like weird 3-bar chrome grille that they put on like the Fusion and all that stuff was pretty ugly. I didn't like it. It had a huge Ford emblem in the back end of it. But for the second gen, they put this really cool smooth nose on it, and the only Ford, and back to the logos, the only Ford logos on it is there's little ones in the center cap, and then on the rear hatch lid in the bottom right corner, there's a small one that measures about 4 inches wide and 2 inches tall. That's it. Otherwise, it's Flex branded. And the really cool thing about this was not only is it massive, tons of room with 3 rows, It's incredibly, incredibly fun to drive.
Really?
Yes, well, so everyone made a really big deal about the Ford Explorer Sport, right? They put the EcoBoost V6 inside the Ford Explorer and give it all this power and performance. Um, they offered that before that in the Flex.
Yeah.
So I had an EcoBoost Flex, so I had this really cool, stylish, huge wagon thing with a 365 horsepower engine and all-wheel drive.
That's hard to argue against.
Sounds like fun.
What's really fun is when you load it up with people and it looks kind of like a stylishy minivan thing, and you go to get on the road, and if you goose the pedal a little bit trying to come out of a side turn, you can break it loose pulling onto the road.
Oh, that's scary with people in it like that.
Right, so you've got 6 or 7 people in it, and you're like, okay, guys, are you ready to go? This car's kind of fast, and they all laugh, and then you nail it, and you come onto the road a little sideways, and then you just launch, and everyone's eyes are big and wide, and it's like, what happened?
I could just imagine now. I see this car and I think that it would just make the perfect road trip car. What's your thoughts on that one?
147%. I want to buy one. I want to buy one bad. I probably won't because it's a little expensively priced, but I do want one. The one I had was totally decked out, top trim model. All the seats were power folding, so like you open up the back doors and there's a little button, the second seat folds down.
Very cool.
You open up the trunk lid and there's buttons back there, and the back seats will fold forward or fold down, or you can actually tumble them in a way. And the storage is really smartly designed. So behind the third row seats, the seats sit in kind of like a deep well.
Yeah.
If you want to, you can fold the seats and tumble them forward, so you lose front to back space in that back storage area, but you gain vertical height, like almost 9 or 10 inches of vertical height. So if you have something tall like a TV box you're trying to fit back there, you have extra room for it.
Very cool.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so like the rear seats would fold in like 3 or 4 different ways depending on which buttons you hit. At first it was kind of complicated, and you can actually set them up and fold them out so that the trunk won't close because it'll hit the seats, which is weird. But yeah, so you have lots of control over how the seats will fold. And like I just keep thinking, so I'm a huge scuba diver, and I'm like, I could take 5 people and all their scuba and camping gear, and I could head down to the Keys for a week and a half in this vehicle and have plenty of room. Gas mileage is terrible with that EcoBoost V6.
Well, yeah, if you're stomping it to like 8,000 RPMs.
So the sticker says 16 city. Well, yeah, but the sticker says 16 city, 23 highway, with an 18 combined. In my whole time with it, I only saw about 15 and a half.
Ouch.
Ouch, yeah.
Yeah, and then like I said, it is a little expensive. This one's about as expensive as it gets, but it's about $50 shy of $50,000.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, some people like it.
Yeah. Right around the time they brought me the Flex, I actually got to get a new decked out Explorer also. It wasn't the Explorer Sport, it was just the Explorer, and it was actually slightly cheaper than the Flex.
That's really odd.
Yeah. But I mean, it had everything, dual zone climate control, leather everywhere, big screen in the dash. Like I said, all the electric folding seats. It was really comfortable to ride in. The low ride height made it easy to get in and out of, made it easy to put things in the back of. So it rode more like a car. I mean, it was just like the world's biggest, most awesome station wagon.
Now, looking at that thing, I always picture it handling about like a pig. Is it okay in corners, or is it piggish?
So much better than you would expect, and part of that comes back down to the ride height. It doesn't actually sit that far off the ground, so it doesn't lean a lot. And I don't know if it has to do with all the motors and electronics in the seats or everything, but it felt like the center of gravity was fairly low in the car. Like it didn't have that really top-heavy tip feel to it.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, it was not a sports car by any means, but yeah, I mean, I was caning it around a couple of my back roads just with a big smile on my face.
I'm just imagining you flying around corners in this massive wagon.
Everyone who's listening, I implore you, just take 10 minutes out of your day one day, go down to a Ford dealership and drive one of these things. Used, new, whatever. Make sure it's the all-wheel drive EcoBoost model. and just spend some time behind the wheel. You will come away so impressed. I mean, people don't buy it because it's big and it's square and they think it's ugly. That's fine. That's their prerogative. My general take on that sort of situation is you spend more time inside of it than outside of it. So why would you spend time and money improving everyone else around you on the interstate's day than improving your day? So if you buy the car that's nicer to be in and nicer to drive, you're improving your day, not theirs. But whatever. It doesn't sell super well. It's sort of an oddity in the Ford lineup, but I think it's one of the best things they make.
Very nice.
All right. Well, that was a little lengthy for us for the Weekly Wheels section, but I hope everybody enjoyed it. Let's go ahead and move on to some news. Obviously, this week was April Fool's. We had a lot of April Fool's news.
Good stuff here.
Yeah, there was some pretty good stuff that happened. We had the rebadged Fiat Jeep. We had our Dodge Dart Barracuda.
The Jeep isn't April Fool's.
Yeah, the Jeep was just a rendering by our friends at Bold Ride.
Come on, you can't tell me that they think that's serious in any way, shape, fashion, or form.
I don't think they weren't being serious when they sent it to us. It was just a kind of a tester because their Fiat has slowly smashed Jeep down to smaller. So they're just kind of playing around saying, hey, what if they made a rally-capable hatchback? A trail-rated hatchback. What if they did that? That's kind of what they did.
It's kind of like a WRX Jeep version from Fiat.
Right, but if I said to you, what is the definition of an April Fool's style news story, it would be something that doesn't exist, that's a little absurd, that's kind of fun to read, and it's completely made up, right?
Yeah, well, this published on the 28th of March.
All right, we'll give it to him. To me, it goes in my basket of April Fool's stuff. But we had the Barracuda thing, which I thought was pretty funny. Justin, wasn't that your idea?
Yeah, that's my baby. I hit up our rendering guy and said, hey, let's make something as believable as possible here. Don't make up a real rendering. Pick a magazine, paste the Dodge Dart on there, do something fancy with it, make it look cool, like it'd be an SRT Dart or something like that, and put it in a magazine cover, and we'll post it as a leaked magazine cover. And that's what he did, and believe it or not, I mean, a lot of people seem to like it. A lot of it made, I think, 2 top April Fool's lists this year, so we had some good traffic on it. He really came up with the entire idea, though. I have to give most of the credit to him. I had the basic wraparound idea, but he's the one that really put it together and shined it up for me.
Well, all right then. There you go. Thumbs up. You did an awesome job. As any of you guys saw, we did actually do favorites of Peace. Justin, you had listed as your favorite the BMW ad. You want to give us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that one was just really cool. There's all these sound synthesizers inside cars now that make a 4-cylinder sound like a V8, or they cancel out noise so an Econobox can sound like a luxury car, and so on and so forth. BMW took that and took it to a new absurdness by putting the force injection booster in it that uses electrodes in the seats and some other cool things to basically give you a facelift so it feels like you're pulling pretty hard forward G's. And what really got me the most is, I'm looking at the picture, sorry, I'm cracking up here. The picture they posted in the press release of both the people with their faces smashed back and the dog with his ears up in the
dog.
air. The dog does it.
The dog is where it's at.
That spaniel in the back with his ears like 4,000 feet out in the air.
And what's great is, they took something that is already absurd, all the sound synthesizers, and said, how can we make this even worse? Okay, let's make fake G's now, which it's awesome. It broke my cardinal rule of April Fool's. My cardinal rule of April Fool's is it has to be at least somewhat believable. That's the only part that it broke. But the rest of it was just pure awesomeness.
Right. I mean, it's just there comes a time where they have to make something like it's just that's too good. But BMW has a really good record of awesome April Fool's jokes. Like last year or 2 years ago, they had the M3 truck.
Yeah, I remember that one.
What blew my mind is when they actually made that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned in our piece, there was the Viper sport brake. I think it was Yahoo
Yeah, sport
Autos
brake.
did that. I think Yahoo Autos has actually pulled the piece down now. I couldn't find it to do a little bit of extra research on it, but when I saw the Viper sport brake, I'm like, okay, I know this is an April Fool's joke, but I really want them to pull a BMW and build it and bring it to New York.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be the coolest? Yeah.
Right? Just to see it in person, I'm like, yay.
Oh, they're coming to get you.
Yep.
Well, they definitely have enough Viper sitting in stock to hack one up, so
Yeah,
that shouldn't
you
be a
know, that's
problem.
that's the saddest part about it is that, you know, I mean, the Viper just isn't selling as well. I don't know what the deal is. I mean, it's an awesome car and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, yeah, it's pricey, but I mean, it's a lot of car for the buck. You know, why it's so backlogged on sales is kind of beyond me. I don't know.
It is a lot of car for the buck. There's a lot more car out there that, I mean, you got the Corvette, that's
Yeah, it's
incredible
true.
performance for way cheaper, and then you have the GTR, which is way more performance for the same price.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah, I
you
think
know,
that's
not a whole lot more says like America than, you know, a Berling V10 from Chrysler.
I mean, you know what? A big boat engine inside of a tiny car is pretty cool. Um, but let's do a bit more America here. Mark, your favorite April Fool's thing was actually really sweet. The
Oh
truck
my,
trend Bronco.
oh my gosh, America all the way. I mean, this is such a good rendering. I read half the article before I realized what the date was. I was so excited. So they took the Ford Atlas concept and they hacked it up in Photoshop, made it a Bronco. And the article from Truck Trend is like, it's like 800 words long of all the stuff about this truck, the new engines, how it's getting a smaller diesel, the four-wheel drive, like all this stuff, so detailed. And then the last paragraph they hit you with it like, oh, by the way, it's all fake.
yeah. When I saw that piece, I started drooling because I'm a huge Bronco fan. Always have loved them. And when I saw that, I'm like, well, that actually looks real. And I did the same thing you did. I forgot what date it was. Because the rendering is so spot on. I mean,
It's perfect.
after I read it was April Fool's, I went back and tried to pick little things out of the rendering, and there's very little to pick out. And there's only
No.
a few little flaws here and there that make it obvious once you know.
Yeah.
Right.
And the thing about it, like, I got kind of confused because in the article at Truck Trend, like, they use the interior of a Super Duty truck. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. They're using that interior, and not like, you know, the one from the Atlas. But I just kind of skipped it. I didn't pay any attention to it until, you know, after the article. I'm like, oh, why didn't I see that? But
Yeah, that's exactly where you start realizing it if you know is when you see the interior.
yeah, but it's just perfect. It really is. And I beg Ford and GM too with the Blazer to bring these back. They're so cool. I mean, come on. Everyone needs a two-door SUV.
Right. Well, but that's the thing though. There's not a lot of money left in a two-door SUV.
Nah, come on.
I mean, so even you know, Range Rover has the Evoque. That's pretty much the only two-door style SUV you can still buy, and no one is buying that in two-door. They're buying them all in four-door. They just are. It's just a fact of our market.
Yeah, but
It's
I mean,
sad, but
I think if they made the Bronco with the removable top, I mean, I
that'll be the key.
yeah,
Removable
I think I would sign my life away to get that truck. Yeah.
I think with the correct marketing, if they really bang these things out with marketing as off-road, this is an off-road vehicle, kind of like they did with like the Toyota FJ and the Wrangler, like they still do to this day. There's still a market out there for these two-door SUVs as long as they're marketed to the off-road community.
Yeah.
You can't try to market this thing to a soccer mom. Just say, well, what do I need that for?
Yeah.
If you're marketing it out to the off-road community, the Bronco and Blazer, they still have a spot.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it
still-
would make it.
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I'm just saying I think it would make it in reality if it did work, but I do have to, you know, remind myself every time I look at the picture that it sadly is only an April Fool's joke.
Right. I don't know if like a full two-door, but I think if they were to do like a closed-up off-road heavy-duty style truck and maybe give it the small like suicide truck doors to get into a back seat,
Like the
that they
FJ.
could, yeah, that I think they could get away with that.
Yeah,
That's a
Well,
possibility.
actually, especially now that the FJ is dead,
Mhm.
that's true.
you know, it's not a huge hole, but that opens up a hole in the market. But my favorite piece from April Fools was from a former colleague of mine um, over at Road and Track. They did a piece of F1 news. As anyone who's watched F1 has probably noticed, the shape and styling of some of the F1 cars' new front ends is a little oddly shaped,
Questionable.
Yeah.
questionable.
That's being polite.
But so my old colleague Max Prince did up an article where Caterham's car, which has one of the more protruding front ends, is going to be censored for all races that appear on television in Japan. If any of you guys have ever been to Japan or know a lot about their culture, like that's not actually too big of a stretch. And it's a hilarious way to take an odd sort of cultural difference and apply it to something that we all think and know about, which is like every time we look at the front end of an F1 car, we think, it's a big wiener. I mean, it's ridiculous and it's childish, but it's just sort of what happens. And the only thing I don't like about that piece is that I wasn't the one to think about it because it's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, it seemed to get a lot of good news or a lot of good publicity out of that. They seem to really nail it on that. I think. No
I
pun
mean,
intended.
it's
having lived having lived in Asia for 2 years myself, it made me laugh because that's the kind of stuff you actually do see on TV there.
right. It's totally believable.
Everything is censored. A woman wears a low-cut shirt on their little like Jay Leno show. I'm sorry, he's gone now. The David Letterman show. They wear a low-cut top and the cleavage is showing. Censored, big pixelations right there. So it made me kind of laugh because I saw that all firsthand.
Right, like I said, it's it's sort of funny, but if you understand the culture, like it's totally believable, and that makes it even funnier. But
Yeah.
all right, let's go ahead and move on to some real news here. Actually, I do kind of want to talk about that Fiat Jeep rally car thing a little bit more because as ridiculous as it is, how would either of you put money down for something like that?
Okay, personally, no, but I think the idea is it's there. When I wrote the piece and when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, what a terrible idea!" Like you're gonna defame the Jeep name. But the more I got into it, I'm like, man, they could really like open up a new market with this and totally like eat some WRX and well, now that the Evo's gone, you know, but I mean, it's kind of a cool idea. I like
Um,
it.
the thing I like about it the most is so obviously there are things like the Polo R rally car and stuff like that Volkswagen makes, and we don't get anything like that here. I think if Volkswagen was to bring a Polo R to America, it wouldn't sell. No one wants an even smaller, even cheaper Golf that just happens to be fast and have all-wheel drive. I think that'll turn them off. But if you can use the Jeep name to sell something like that, you can be like, look, we know it's not a standard off-roader, but it's got the Jeep name and it's made for rally, and do some great ads showing this thing flying down some back road sideways, chucking up dirt and gravel everywhere and going through all this like mud and stuff. Like I think that would kind of get people excited a little bit, and so they can use the Jeep's legendary name of being off-road and dirty to try and push a new car into the market that we don't have.
Yeah,
I
I,
agree.
I think it's there. It could happen.
Now, here's one issue though I have with the rendering that first popped in my mind when I saw it. Does
It's
that
hideous.
even look like a? Well, it's hideous, but functionality. Does that look like a rally car? It has low-profile tires and all that.
Yeah,
all that
it
good-
definitely. Yeah, it needs
I'm-
about 2 inches more of ground clearance, some mud flaps
Yeah.
on it, 15-inch rims with some meaty like knobby tires.
See,
Well,
what
I
I'm
mean,
thinking is something. I'm thinking of something along the lines of the old like Subaru XT. I don't know if any of you guys, you probably remember that, Christian. Yeah, the Subaru XT that had the adjustable suspension. When you're on the road, it rode normal ride height, but you push the button and it came up another. I can't remember how much higher it went, but it bumped up a little bit so you could take it off road and it could handle some of the not heavy off roading, but like rallying, it could probably handle that. So maybe they have something like that built into that where it lifts up a little bit when you go off road and things like that.
well, but I mean, to be really honest though, like I don't know how much you guys have paid attention to a lot of the like World Rallycross scene and stuff right now, but with Ford racing Fiestas and the small Citroens and things like that, Like this car isn't that far off the mark. They don't ride that high because yes, you're off road and you're doing dirt and you're doing gravel and stuff, but you don't need 5-6 inches of ground clearance. I mean, you really don't need that much because it's just a loose surface. It's not a very rough and tumble surface. Even like with the smaller wheels, you don't even necessarily need that. And these are supposed to be street going versions. Like, so think about the WRX and the STI. You know, those don't have huge ride heights. Those come with 17, 18-inch wheels. I mean, this is something that, especially now with the Lancer being dead, there is sort of a market for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, this is the more streetable version of the car. But I think it would still be cool to have both in the ad, show the cool off-road rally car first with all the, the lights on the front, everything like that, and then kind of match it up with like, hey, you can do the same stuff if you buy this car,
Right, that would be the way I would do it. Is I would start with the rally car, and then like in mid drift around a huge corner swinging gravel, the street car comes flying in and takes it over on the inside line, and then the camera follows the new car, and then it hits the street and it slides to a stop.
I like that.
That sounds like good.
Yeah. So Chrysler, Jeep, Fiat, anybody, if you're listening, you can get our address and send the money on to us.
But say you can send the royalty checks to Christian Mo at. And don't worry, fans of the show, I will use a little bit of the money to get us even more cool equipment so we can do more cool stuff with this podcast. Yeah, so I think it's kind of a cool idea. I don't know if it really has legs, and it is a little absurd, but at the same time, I can kind of see, depending on how you want to chase the market, that there might be a hole for it.
I think it's cool.
One thing that I do think needs to show up and has to show up, and I want to show up, is this new rumored F-Type Club Sport. Justin, what do you think about the F-Type Club Sport? Justin?
So that's actually Mark's.
I was like, did he cut out? Yeah, I wrote that one up. But I mean, it's.
But Justin can talk about it.
Yeah. Okay, whatever. Go for it, J-Man.
No, you can go ahead, Mark. You know a lot more about it than I do.
Well, we don't really know anything about it. Just the rumor about it. The guys at Motoring had a chat with Jaguar's program director Russ Varney about it. Basically, what it is they're throwing around the idea of hacking away some weight and possibly adding some power and kind of making a lightweight track car out of this thing, kind of the Z28 out of the F-Type. What this means is, I mean, just the next model up, it's going to be a lot more powerful. I mean, they really didn't give that much detail about it, and we're all kind of guessing at this point, but why not? The car's beautiful to begin with.
I think they actually gave, at least me, all of the information I need in any way, shape, fashion, or form to develop an opinion about this car, and that is a weight savings target of more than 400 pounds.
Yeah, 440 to be exact. That's
right, so it's 200 kilos. Right, that's 200 kilos, and even for a car that weighs more than 3,500 pounds, like when you think about 400 pounds in that sort of context, it doesn't sound like that huge of a difference. But I mean, we're talking full seconds off of 0 to 60 times. We're talking huge increases in top speed. I mean, 400 pounds literally could turn this thing into an entirely new car and bring it up to an entirely new level of performance than most of its peers. So like at that point, it wouldn't be so much like a 911 competitor as it would be like a 911 GT3 competitor. I mean, it would move it that far up the line just from weight savings.
Yeah, and they're throwing around the idea of, instead of using the 5-liter V8, using the supercharged 3-liter V6. It's a lot lighter, and if they pump it up, they can get some impressive numbers out of this engine. They're talking about like 550. Well, no, that's the V8. What was the number I wrote in there?
Well, I think currently the V6S is 360 horsepower out of the V6S F-Type Jag. I mean, if they could just push that, if they could just push that to 400, I mean, that's really
that would be impressive.
Yeah, 400 is doable out of a 3.0, I think.
Yeah, out of the car would weigh like 3,200 pounds, so that's pretty impressive.
That's insane. And people
Right.
don't really give much credit to weight savings. I mean, you have these engineers that spend countless hours to shave 15 to 20 pounds off of a car sometimes. To talk about 400 pounds, that's humongous.
Yeah, and we do know that the chassis and everything is pretty much made out of aluminum, so that would pretty much stay intact. What they're talking about cutting weight is from the interior, those thick leather seats and all the sound deadening and everything like that. So if they do make this car, it will likely not be a very comfortable car for long haul. It will, it'll be your weekend track car. Um, so look for that.
Yeah,
Hey,
anybody.
hey, Mark. So it wouldn't be comfortable. You know, I really thought I had some care here somewhere, but it appears no care. I
No, I
could not
wouldn't care
care
either.
even the tiniest
I
bit.
mean, it's they're not gonna replace the seat with a 5 gallon bucket. They're gonna cut it down and put some Recaras in there or something to make it a little more sturdy. I mean, they're not. Yeah, the car. Yeah, it's gonna be comfortable. It's not gonna be your GT car that you want to take cross country. Not
You
like
know,
an F-type coupe.
if the bucket was bolted down and had a small cushion,
I was just gonna say, give me a stadium cushion. Or take some construction pieces, maybe liquid nails, nail that thing down, and there you go. I'll drive it.
because
Some
that'll be like an
some
extra 100 pounds.
some journalist somewhere is gonna complain about the lack of side bolstering in that seat. So I doubt it's gonna work.
Well, okay, fine. We'll do 3 buckets, one on each side, and then one to sit on.
I put some plywood, balsa wood.
Balsa wood. Oh my god.
Hey, Corvette used to use balsa
Yeah,
wood, actually.
in the floorboards. Yeah, it worked for them.
Yeah, it was 2 small sheets of metal with balsa wood sandwiched in the middle to cut weight. Like that, I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
That's nuts. But
All
honestly,
right.
anybody who looks at this car thinking comfort is crazy. I said the same thing about the M3 and M4. Anyone who goes there expecting this thing to be comfortable, you're nuts. So
Yeah.
it's going to be marketed to that person who doesn't care. It's going to be marketed to Christian and me.
I don't know if I'd agree with you there on the BMW. Have you ever spent some time in an M3?
And the old one, yes, but the new one, no.
Okay. I've
The
not driven the new one yet,
Yeah,
but I have driven the E90, the last generation model with the V8.
Yeah.
Surprisingly incredibly comfortable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but the
but
new ones have a completely different suspension on it. I think they don't even have any
There's
rubber
no-
bushings. Like
there's
it's,
no rubber bushings. There's play-free ball joints. I mean, this thing's gonna be on rails, dude. It's gonna
a
be
track
steel
beast.
tires on rails.
yeah.
Well, BMW, let us know by letting us all drive one, and we'll see if what we think about it versus the old one.
I'll send
Um,
you my address.
There you go. But let's go ahead and move on to some more cars we have because we have a bit more news to get through. This is still in that same vein of super powerful awesomeness. We have a Hellcat Challenger, which is going apparently to be a Dodge Challenger with more horsepower than a Dodge Viper.
America.
America.
That's
I mean,
exactly what that car screams.
Yeah, I mean, if you put Google Translate up to the exhaust pipe on this car, that's what it would come out as. America with an
No.
apostrophe.
I disagree. I think it would come out with just long lines of obscenities.
Oh, I love this car. They're talking about the next generation of Challenger, and in that car, they're talking about making a supercharged version of the 6.2 liter Hemi, making ungodly amounts of horsepower. Right now, the Viper's kicking out 640, and so this is going to be above that. They're thinking 650 to 675, somewhere in there, out of a rear-wheel drive car, 2-door. I mean, yeah, it's going to weigh still as much as a house, but
75 tons, I think.
Yeah.
It's curb weight.
but America,
Give or take.
come on. Yeah, and they're talking about bolting it up to the TorqueFlite 8-speed or the 6-speed. No, the TorqueFlite's the 8-speed auto, and then the Tremec 6-speed manual. That's a darn good combination.
One thing that worries me about that, especially as they push closer to that 700 horsepower number, is can that 8-speed auto actually handle that level of power without eating itself alive?
Well, according to Ralph Gills from an interview he did with Allpar, yeah, the TorqueFlite can handle that. Apparently, it is rated way past what the Hellcat engine is capable of putting out. So, and right now, they're thinking about 640 foot-pounds of torque. That's impressive. So I
Yeah.
don't know what the thing's rated for, but it's got it. I mean, for it to be in a production car, the thing would have to be rated up to like 800 pound-feet or something like that. So they're not, combusting under the car as you power away
Right.
from a green light.
Look at all that tire smoke. No, that's a fire.
Yeah, that's my transmission.
All right.
Don't laugh. I've done that before.
Ah,
All that does is make us want to laugh more.
yeah.
I'll spare
So-
you my stupid 16-year-old story.
Right, but so we have slowly moved up in power through this podcast. We started with a turbocharged Jeep small hatchback thing. We moved to the F-Type Club, now up to the Hellcat Challenger. We're gonna finish our horsepower war on this podcast right now with the Tryon Nemesis, which, if you guys haven't heard about this car, as far as I'm concerned, it's also an April Fool's joke. Because
would
it's
agree.
a company that, as far as I know, has no other cars, and all they have for us is a render. But they say, we're building a sports car with 2,000 horsepower.
Christian, everyone has bashed you, including me, about your comment on the first show about too much power. I think I agree with you on this one. 2,000 horsepower out of anything other than a top fuel dragster is uncontrollable and just laughable.
Right.
I
At this
can't
point,
stop laughing right now.
yeah. At this point, it might as well be 2 million horsepower.
I know, and they're gonna do it out of a twin turbocharged V8. Like, what kind of cams are you rolling in that thing? Like, really? Come on now.
No, I think the issue is that the turbo is going to be as big as the Volkswagen Polo. Like it's just going to have to be.
Like some 747 turbines on the side of it versus turbos. I think that's what we're looking at here. I don't know.
Justin's got some of the info on this. I think, don't you?
Well, you guys basically covered every last thing on the car. The press release was about maybe 600 words long, so there's not very much going on with it. The design of the car is awesome. The look of the car is just phenomenal. It looks a part of a supercar. Looks something that came out of Italy or Spain or something. So it definitely does not look American. Now the twin turbo V8, like you said, Mark, that's pushing it. I think for 2,000 horsepower. I will have to go with you on this one, Christian. That's a little bit too much. And I'm pretty sure that if this car, and that's a big fat IF, this car makes it into production, it's not going to be 2,000 horsepower.
No.
They're going to revise that and say, well, because of safety things and this and that, and if economy and efficiency, we had to detune it. But the chances are this is going to end up being just a nice little design study, and they're going to put it with a little twin turbo V6.
I don't even know if
400
it'll get.
horsepower.
Yeah. I don't even know if it's going to get that far. I mean, I think that for the most part, this is just going to be pure vaporware. Like, I don't know if this thing is ever going to actually materialize.
That's the likely situation. But the thing I like about this, what I think is really cool, though, although it's probably never going to happen, is that they built this car to accommodate people over 6 foot tall. I don't have that problem. I'm all of 5'6", but still, I know plenty of people that are over 6 foot tall that have to drive an SUV because they can't get in a sports car. Someone over 6 foot gets in my Miata, suddenly they're hitting the roof of the top of their head. So it's nice, and they also make it optional to fit 7-footers. So I'm just imagining like this massive bubble that they slap on top of the car for a 7-footer. I mean,
I don't want to flip it.
It looks like the Jetsons car.
That's exactly what I thought of, the big bubble they put on the Jetson car. So at least they're marketing to a niche market, the NBA players. That's good.
I was going to say, this is going to be like the NBA car of choice.
But I guess, okay, now first, Justin, you shouldn't tell people your height because you're just vocal, so they don't actually know. So you could pretend you're 6 feet tall all day long. But my thing, and I can't figure out why all of these car companies do this, is why do these companies think they know better than Porsche and McLaren and Koenigsegg and like Bugatti? Like, Bugatti hasn't pushed their cars past 1,200 horsepower. You know, even the insanely stupid fast Hennessy, like the Hennessy Venom, they're like 1,250 horsepower. Like that seems to be about the upper limit of what we can really still use to make a sort of usable vehicle and get that kind of power down. And then you have all these tuners like, bring us your Ferrari, we'll jump it up to 1,800 horsepower, and we've got 2,000 horsepower Lambos, and now we have a new car that we're going to make a 2,000 horsepower V8. And I'm like, yeah, because you in your shed in some tiny town that no one has ever heard of knows way better than Ferrari and their billion-dollar R&D budget.
Well, and that's exactly why so many of these automakers fail, is because they can't do it. They don't think like Porsche and Lamborghini and so forth. They're thinking, oh, how much more power can I get? That's all people care about is power. You know, there is a point where power is excessive. I remember, I think it was sometime this year. I can't remember the name of the car because it's so obscure, but Top Gear actually did a review on a car that was monster powerful and supposed to be this phenomenal car. And every flipping time they tried to drive the car, it either blew up, caught on fire, or just spun out.
That was the Zenova thing. Or
Yes,
Zenova.
thank you. And it couldn't clear their track faster than I think like a Ford Focus ST or something crazy like that.
Right, because you get to the limit, and it was like my whole discussion about too much power before is you hit the limits that we have been able to alter physics. Tires are only so sticky. Suspension is only so tough. I mean, there's only so much we can do with aerodynamics and everything else before you just like, you know what, that's too much. That's just too much.
Yeah.
If they're purely marketing this car to people planning on driving on the Bonneville salt flats, then great, fantastic. There's your car. 2,000 horsepower worth. But yeah,
Right.
this is where I can agree with you.
Even that though, like most salt flat runs are only a mile, and the salt flats are actually really slippery, so they'd still have trouble for the first half mile. They'd be in fifth of their sixth gears, still spinning tires at 170 miles an hour at Bonneville. You know, it's cool to think and it's cool to say, but they're hitting the point of ridiculous.
Yeah, and the top speed on this car, I think, epitomizes that. It's listed as 270 plus miles an hour.
Well,
I sit back and laugh.
You know what? To me, all that says is all of our horsepower is completely wasted, because 270 miles an hour is almost what the Veyron Supersport does with 1,200 horsepower, and 270 is what the Hennessy Venom does with 1,200 horsepower.
Yeah,
and,
only
right, and like 270 is what Koenigsegg is claiming ish with their like 1,300 horsepower.
yeah. And 0 to 60 on this car, 2.8. GTR can.
That's actually pretty horrible.
Yeah,
I mean, they
GTR
say,
can whip that.
well, again, it's all turbo lag. It's going to be 2 seconds of you standing there with your foot on the pedal not moving, and then the turbo is going to finally spool up, and you're going to launch from 0 to 60 in 0.8 seconds.
Yeah. Anyway, this car is ridiculous.
All right.
Yeah.
We do have one more little news story, but we're running a little short on time. So we'll try and cover this quick. Justin, you have a little bit about Ferrari fighting some people over a Facebook page.
Yes, in a very ridiculous story that we happened across last week, Ferrari is fighting a 21-year-old over his Ferrari fan page that garnered actually a lot of attention because when he first launched this page, of course, Facebook wasn't huge. So it really became kind of sort of the official, unofficial Ferrari fan page. Now Ferrari is going after him for the page, and I think they took control of the page, but the kid relinquished control without signing a contract for any compensation. So now there's a big legal battle of whether the kid gets the page back or whether Ferrari's going to keep the page and not have to pay him, or if they're going to have to pay him. He's actually suing them for $11 million.
You gotta say that with your pinky beside your mouth.
$11 million. Over 55.
We're all doing pinkies and we look like idiots.
Over 5,500 hours of work. I did a little bit of math on this. You know, I'm not a mathematician or anything, but this means he spent about 17 hours a week working on a Facebook page. Now, I know teenagers, he started when he was 15. I know teenagers love Facebook, but 17 hours a week is, first of all, a little bit much on a Facebook page. And secondly, after you do the math and crunch even further, this kid's charging $2,000 an hour. $2,000 an hour for his work.
Why don't I make that much, Justin?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't even
I
think
will.
Donald Trump makes that an hour. Like that's
That's it. I mean, both sides are absolutely insane here. Both sides are nuts. Ferrari number one needs to say, okay, we need to recognize you put the work in. Here's $1 million, $1 million. Here's
No,
that.
and a laser.
no,
Yeah.
I disagree completely. I think here's the issue. Ferrari, I think, fairly intelligently saw early on that this is something that could turn into a potential issue later on down the road with the number of followers who's getting for this page using their name, their brand, their logo, their everything. And they went to him correctly like, we want to take control of the page. Because it is a huge page and it's for our brand, and I mean it makes sense for them to approach him to try and get control of that page.
Sure.
The moment he said yes, sure, that's it. That's the end. You have screwed yourself. You said yes, here's this page, it's just a Facebook thing, whatever. You are now in control. I don't have a contract. There's been no real discussion to like nothing like that. You're done.
Well, the
You
kid
have
did.
put yourself in that position.
Yeah, the kid did screw himself by not getting a contract. If someone like Ferrari approaches you about your Facebook page, you say, "Okay, you can take control, but I need some compensation for the page you're taking over. There's this many followers, this much content. I put this much time into it. You can't just take it. I need you to give me something for it." And he is putting the cart before the horse a little bit here. But I still think Ferrari should do the right thing and say, "Hey, here's a little bit of scratch. Thanks for the page. Now get out of our lives."
Yeah, I mean, I think he made the mistake by suing them first. Um, Now, granted, we don't have all of the details, but I don't feel like there was probably enough pre-legal sort of discussions for this. Because like that would have been my stance on it. The moment Ferrari said we want this page, I'd have been like, you give me some money and I will wipe my hands of this page for the rest of eternity, and it's yours. The end. Just like if I sold somebody a car, you give me money, the car is yours. That's the end of it. And by going straight to the court and being like, hey, here's Ferrari, and I want an ungodly amount of money, all he's done is put him in a really awkward position that makes him look kind of bad and look kind of silly. And Ferrari is stuck, I think, rightfully defending their name and their brand.
And they have a right to defend their name and brand. They absolutely do. I just think I know they're a company, but on an ethical sense, I think maybe they should go ahead and say, here's a little something. Um, yeah, sure, ethics may not come into play on this one, but I just think as big of a company as they are, they should maybe compensate the kid for some of the work he did.
I mean, yeah, I think if they sent him, a couple $100,000 and said shut up and go away, that should be the end of it, and that's probably the quickest and smartest decision. But we'll just we will just have to see how this plays out.
Yeah. Here's a red T-shirt, kid.
There you go.
Yeah. Here's a 1/32nd scale model of a LaFerrari. There you go. Have fun.
I got a bunch of those behind me. Well, not of La Ferraris, but I got a couple scale models back there. I do have an F12 Berlinetta.
Nice.
I really like that
That's
car.
fair compensation.
I love the
for
F12.
$11 million.
All right, before we get way too off topic on this, we're already hitting our hour mark here. Let's go ahead and move on to our viewer questions. Again, we want to thank everyone who comments on the post and sends us questions. We really appreciate it. We like hearing from you. It gives us some extra stuff to talk about, and it makes sure that we're giving you guys what you want to hear. So again, questions, you can please post them down in the comments, or if you want, you can send us an email directly if it's a longer question. The email address is podcast@TopSpeed.com. We also have a new Twitter handle. It is just at TopSpeed Podcast. So if you guys want to reach us there, you can do that. But we're going to go ahead and jump to the questions. The first one we have here is from reader Witty Derek. He wants to know what we think about the very cheap cars that are sold in Europe, like the Dacia. He says, I mean, these cars just move you from A to B in decent comfort, and they're about 6,000 to 8,000 euros for a brand new car. Do we think that car would ever work that well in U.S.? He thinks it would be a great first car, as long as you don't care how you look in it. Can I go ahead and start us off with this one, guys?
Go right ahead.
Well, Witty Derek, I think part of the problem has to do with these cars don't have a lot of features that are actually necessary to be a car sold in the U.S. It is getting better, but there are a lot of safety regulations that U.S. cars have that the EU doesn't. that some of these cars don't have to come with. Like one of them is dual smart airbags. There has to be 2 airbags, and they have to be the smart adjustable airbags in the front of the car. A lot of these cars are only sold with a driver's side airbag only to help save money. And if you want to get multiple airbags, you have to buy the top trim spec of these. Then you also run into a lot of the costs from issues with imports. There's a lot of import tax and a lot of customs fees and things that these companies have to pay. And then you also get the exchange rate. So 8,000 euros is like $11,000 or $12,000. So at that point, you're already to the price of some of the cars we have, like the Nissan Versa. And to be quite honest, Nissan sold a $10,000 Versa and nobody bought it because it had no air conditioning. It was terribly cheap. It was awful. People want cheap cars, but they don't want to give up on niceties. This is America, buddy. It's gonna have air conditioning. It's gonna have a stereo. That's how we want things. And I think if a company brought a car like that, it would, at first on novelty and for people who wanted a new car for cheap, would sell a couple thousand units. But overall, I think it would be a massive, massive failure.
Well, I mean, okay, so here's a thing that comes to my mind: the 2014 Mitsubishi Mirage. I mean, the thing starts at $13,000. It only has 74 horsepower out of a 1.2 liter inline 3, but it does get 44 miles a gallon. You got the choice of 5-speed manual or CVT. It does come with air conditioning. It does come with power windows. It does have airbags, but I mean, it is a really tiny little car that doesn't really have a whole lot of appeal to it. That is offered here. There's the things like the Versa that's offered. Other really small, tiny cars. Kia has a couple, but I mean, they don't do well in America. So I mean, why we don't have more of these? Well, no one buys them. That's my take on it.
Yeah, the market's just really not here. I mean, we want our power windows, we want our CD player, we want our nice seats. We have to have our dual airbags, the smart airbags. Who the hell knows what Lancia is? I mean, a lot of these Euro cars, we don't know. Skoda, Lancia, all those ones, none of us know them. We know Nissan, we know Mitsubishi, and even Mitsubishi is a stretch for some people nowadays. But the market is not there anymore for stripped down, bare bones, sub $10,000 cars.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's the biggest difference too, is like that magic number, like $10,000. So like an $8,000 or an 8,000 euro or a 6,000 euro car sounds awesome. Like if they could convert that directly over to dollars, if they could make a brand new car for $7,000 here in the States, I think that would actually sell really well. But we don't have those. The only one we had close was 10,000, and that was too big of a sacrifice for people. Like, I think at 7,000 we're willing to make those sacrifices. At 10,000 we're not. And so everything we have, like the cheapest we get, is like that $13,000 mark. And once you're paying $13,000, I mean, you're only $15,000 from like a Fiesta. I mean, like a nicer sort of better built car. So yeah, as nice as the idea is for those cars, I don't think they'll do well here.
And really, cars like that don't compete with other cars in that market. They compete with used cars. Because I think of like a $12,000 car, I'm thinking, I go to the used market, I can get something with 50, 60,000 miles on it. It's got a V6. It's got leather seats. It's got an automatic transmission. It's got dual zone climate control. It's got all this nice stuff. It's 5 years old, but it's still a decently reliable car. Yeah, it might not have warranty on it, but it's
right.
got all the bells and whistles.
That's actually a hugely good point, especially like where I'm at in Knoxville and a lot of larger metropolitan areas. A lot of luxury cars are bought and sold in these sort of areas. For 12 grand, I can get a really nice 3 Series that's like 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
So I can have a car that barely has air conditioning, or I can have a BMW.
Or a Volkswagen Phaeton.
Yeah, actually.
I read an article on that car the other day, and I'm like, oh, how awesome! They were talking about how terrible the resale is on that car, and I'm like, I should go buy one.
No, I want one so bad.
Everyone needs a V12.
Yeah, I think you get it for like 18 or 20 grand for like a nice one.
Now.
All right. So our next question, and thank you for listening and thank you for giving me a question, but I hate you for your name. From now on, if you're going to ask a question, please have a name like Bob Smith or Woody Derrick. This is Edwinove, Edwnove. So I have no idea how to pronounce that, and I'm sorry.
There.
Edwin. But he says he wants to know how we keep being impartial when we're writing or reviewing cars. Do we get influenced by what other people write? And for example, he says he likes Mazdas and he couldn't bash one even if he can see what all the faults are.
Okay,
Well,
I think my take on this one is, even if I have a favorite person in the world, I still know their faults. I recognize them, but I just try not to focus on them. The same with cars. Like, I like my Trailblazer, but there's tons of faults. I can look at them all day long and I can point them out, but at the same time, I don't really look at them. Same thing with newer cars. Like, I can stay impartial because I know the good and the bad, and I try to stay right in the middle and point out the good, point out the bad, but don't really take a side. You're the third party. You're just basically telling other people about it. You're not really paid to have a partial opinion, I guess.
yeah, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. It's really not. Like when I drove the Miata Club, it was hard for me to say bad stuff about that car. But like you said, there are obvious things that are wrong with it. It's loud, it's plastic, it's crappy, and there are things you can find about them. But the big thing is you just separate yourself from your personal opinion. But also you have to make sure you inject a little bit of your opinion because that's what people really want.
Well, yeah.
So you have to find the bad stuff and inject your personality into that bad stuff too. It's a tough balance. You kind of have to act like you're a teacher. You're just educating people about the car instead of telling what you think about the car.
Right. Those are both great, great explanations for this. And I like what Mark said, where you're like, you know what the bad is. Like, that's it. And so think about doing a car review for us is like, if one of your friends asks you about another friend, even if it's your best friend, and someone says, what is their biggest fault? You still know what it is, and you can still tell them what it is. That's all our job is we tell you what we like about it and what we don't like, because there's always going to be something you don't like about it. If you write a review that literally bashes a car, if it's just, this is terrible and I hate this and nothing about it is good and blah, 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 that's you being unfair, and that's you not doing a service to the reader or to yourself. Everything in the world has good things and bad things, and if all you do is yell about the bad things, then you're creating an issue. If you can do the good things, then, or if you do only the good things, you're still doing the same problem. Then you're giving everyone a false idea of what this item could be. So you should always try and tread that middle ground. As for never being able to hate on a car like you have apparently with Mazdas, I can tell you that actually makes things worse. If it's a brand you love, like with me and Subaru, I will mostly bash a Subaru because it's something that I love and I hold dear, and when they don't get it right the way you know they can, it makes everything worse. Because then that's almost like a personal hit on you. You're like, I know you can do this. I've seen you do this. You do this great, and you didn't do this. What is wrong with you?
It's like your kid screwing up in school. You're like, come on, Johnny, get it right.
You're always toughest on your own. So yeah. That actually makes perfect sense.
Right. And like even with kids, like let's say your kid makes an A on their math test this week, and then 3 weeks down the road they get a D. You're like, no, you've brought home A's on your math test. I know you can make an A on a math test. Why did you bring me home a D, you idiot? I'm gonna hit you with a shoe. This is a disclaimer on the TopSpeed.com podcast. Please do not hit your children with shoes. Thank you.
We prefer belts.
All right. But yeah, so it's easier than you think in a lot of ways, in some ways more difficult than you think. But so those are we only had the 2 questions. Again, we do love questions. Please send them in. We like to read them. We do read every comment we get, every email we get. We'll read all the tweets. We'll read. So please send all those in. We're gonna finish out our show with our own drive and burn segment again. And this week we're gonna do old school off-roading vehicles. So we're going to do an old Scout, an old Jeep Wrangler, or an old Bronco. And the idea is we're looking at something that you could buy used today, mildly restored. So I figure something like about like $8,000 price tag. Justin, you go first.
Okay, this one's pretty easy for me, I think. The one I want to own is a Bronco. It's the most usable of the 3 in my personal opinion. Has the off-road capabilities, has some cargo room, has the back seat that's somewhat usable, and it actually looks good. In my opinion, the Bronco still holds up to this day. Sure, it still looks a little old, but it still holds up. Look is still good. The Wrangler, I want to drive once just because I want to thrash the living hell out of it on every single rock, mud, snow, whatever I can find. I just want to bash them because that's what they're built to do. The Scout, no brainer. Burn it, throw it down a hill, bury it in the sea. I don't care. I hate the Scout. It's ugly. It kind of reminds me of the Jeep Wagoneer. I have the same feeling about that and the Jeep Wagoneer. They're big, ugly, and I just never cared.
Wait. You don't like the Jeep Wagoneer?
Nope, never have.
I think this podcast is over.
Justin, I think you've just been fired.
I will sign off now.
Yeah, you're really harsh in that car, man. You know, like, okay, I have to admit, yeah, it's on my burn list too, but mainly because the other two are really good choices, and the Scout, I think it would be really hard to find parts for. It just restoring that car would be a real pain. The Wrangler, yeah, it's on my drive list. I love Wranglers. I will own a Wrangler one day. It's on my list, but it's not quite as usable as the Bronco. Same thing. It's a great truck. It has the back end to it. Throw some stuff back there. Throw some people back there. It's a lot more room than the Wrangler. And for 90% of the off-road stuff that you're going to be doing, the Bronco's going to be fine. Sure, you don't need all the flexing capability out of a Wrangler, but no, I think the Bronco's where it's at on the own everyday type thing. And my personal favorite is the third gen, the 80 to 86 models.
All right. I was really worried for a moment that everybody was going to have kind of the same idea here, but thankfully you guys are wrong again.
Wait, I'm gonna guess yours. I know it. You're gonna own the Scout. You're gonna drive the Bronco, and you're gonna burn the Wrangler.
No, you are also wrong again.
Wow.
I am not going to burn the Scout though. I have lots of friends with Scouts. I can tell you that finding some parts is a little hard, but not extremely difficult. And most of them last forever. Like the part wise, especially stuff that makes them run. Like for the Terra, the Scout Terra from like the mid 70s, the transmission inside of those is essentially the same one they put in a school bus apparently, because International doesn't make very many parts, so they just put them in everything. But no, I would own the Bronco, because for me there is no greater road trip car in the world than a Bronco with no top. All the cool, great growing up movies where you always had a bunch of guys going on a road trip or whatever, it was always in a Bronco, top off, two guys in the back loaded with stuff. Like, that's what I want. I want a topless 4-seat SUV that I can throw stuff in the back and go on trips with.
Okay, I'll go and buy you a Geo Tracker then.
I said that you could put stuff in with 4 people. You can't do both. No stuff will fit in there. But I would drive a Scout just because, like I said, lots of my friends have them. I like them. I dig them. I think they're cool. I think they're different. And if I was going to go out and spend a whole day in one vehicle, and it's the only time I ever got to touch it or drive it, I'd want it to be something unique and different that a lot of people don't have, and a lot of people don't get to drive, and a lot of people don't get to see. As the Wrangler, everyone in the world pretty much has owned a Wrangler at least once in their lifetime or knows somebody who has, and it's almost as ubiquitous as a Camry. It's just, they're everywhere. Everyone knows what they are.
Because they're that good.
Well, right, but so that doesn't make it very, very special to me, though. So
I think there will always be something special about a Wrangler going down the road without any doors.
Okay, no, doorless driving is actually really awesome. I do dig that. I also have lots of friends with Wranglers, but to me, it's the most ununique of the 3.
I give you that, of course.
And so that's why it would be my last in line for a pick. So I would own a Bronco, I would drive a Scout, and I would burn a Wrangler.
Wow. I'm just glad we got to mention the Bronco so many times in this podcast.
Yeah, it's in its glory now.
I mean, that might just be the podcast name. It's the Bronco Cast.
Ford, if you're listening, please.
Ford, look, it's the Bronco Cast. All right. So, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, we want to thank everyone for hanging out with us and listening to this. Once again, this is the TopSpeed.com podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about the cast, please send us those in the comments, or you can reach us on Twitter at TopSpeedPodcast. We can also be reached by email. The email address is podcast@TopSpeed.com. I am Christian Moe. You can find me directly on Twitter at Moford. Our editor-in-chief, Justin Cupler, can be found on Twitter at the Car Junkie, and Mr. Mark McNabb is simply at Mark McNabb on Twitter. We want to thank everyone for joining us and have a wonderful day. See you guys.